this is something I've done maybe once or twice before, maybe possibly. Either way, this is going to be a little different because Tabletop Taproom made a video, and quite frankly, I'm not going to go over the entire video. It's a bit long. So, also, the Cliff Notes version of this video is that he tends to ramble quite a lot, and actually listening to him ramble for 30 minutes, especially since I'm going to be commenting on what he says, is inadvisable. It would make the video far too long. Anyway, so first off, I really hate the software he used to try to Photoshop himself into a different setting. His lighting makes him look like a ghost haunting an old-time pub in a medieval setting. Also, the design of the pub makes it feel like the architecture speaks to me and says that it's a mobile structure of some sort, but it doesn't have any obvious reason to be mobile. Like, it feels like it should be like the galley on board a galleon. Anyway, though, enough about that. The real topic here is the topic of du jour. What does orcs and racism have to do with RPGs? Let's listen to what he says about the topic. This is one of the clips I selected because of the fact that it really gets to the heart of what he's talking about without getting lost in the weeds like the other 30 minutes of this video.
Kind of, it's the team versus the rules mechanic of the game just work against you. And so you now even have that in board games. But the first time in history you ever had cooperative play by players working towards the same goals came about with guidelines in ours.
I don't think that's actually true, but whatever.
This idea of thousands of years of game lore is just wrong.
See, here is his core failure of understanding. Thousands of years of game lore is in universe history, not out of universe history. Seriously, we're talking about a hobby that's, in its current form, existed for less than 1 century. If you take the combined histories of all of the various TTRPGs currently in existence, well, most of them have existed for less than a year, and many of them are functionally dead TTRPGs that, while you can still play them, the creators of them have stopped working on them, and there has been no development on them for decades. So, anyway, the real point here, though, is that if the in-universe lore says humans and orcs have been at war for 10,000 years, well then, in that fictional setting, humans and orcs have been at war for 10,000 years, and you, as a DM or a player in that world, need to respect that, because that is part of the world you are playing in. Anyway, let's go on.
You do have thousands of years of game history, but it was for board gaming. And, a couple hundred years of wargaming history. But it's only 50 years of RPG history. So you don't have this thousands of years of game lore of prejudice against the orc.
Again, he is doing this weird vacillation of trying to relating one aspect of real-world gaming with in-universe lore, which doesn't make any freaking sense whatsoever, and really kind of destroys his point. Why does it destroy his point? Well, it's simple, is that if the idea here is that it's a racist depiction of orcs, when, that's how orcs act in that fictional setting, then what's the racism? Because, again, that's the history of orcs in that fictional setting, not something that came from a real world source or something like that. No, that's just what orcs are in that setting. And again, it's like the amount of real world time the fiction has existed doesn't matter. Having a TTRPG that's existed for 50 years versus one that's only existed for one doesn't change how you play the game. I mean, sure, the 50-year-old one that has been continually having additions to it is going to end up with the complete manual of the planes below level, where you have a book that is the thickness of a dictionary with so many different race, species, and character class options in it that no sane game master has actually read them all. Because it takes months to read the entire freaking book and actually, grok the whole thing. Anyway, though. Which gets the whole point of, it's the in-universe aspect.
Is there no mercy for the orc son? Is there?
If you want the orcs to be good guys, write an RPG where they're good guys. Seriously. World of Warcraft did it. Okay, that's it. An MMO where you play as either humans or orcs, depending on how much of a godless heathen you are. Or a blood elf. I mean, those are a thing in World of Warcraft too. Either way, though, World of Warcraft's fiction has it written into the lore why orcs are the way they are. And whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is a matter of opinion, but they actually went to the time and effort of writing it that way.
It's logically illogical. It's just a fallacy.
No, dude. The fallacy is the fact that you're conflating real life with in-universe logic. They're not the same. Hey, I sound like Max Liao now. I don't like that. Oh well.
So that is the first assertion here in this, and then the next is because of the word "and."
Oh yeah, this thing. Okay, so I actually generally agree with Max's point here. Is that it's a fiction thing. It doesn't follow real world logic because of the fact that real world logic is tied to real world history. When you divorce the logic from the history, it falls apart. It's like a book binding with no pages in it. It's no longer a book. Anyway, though, yeah. Like I said, when Max Liao says thousands of years of game lore, he's talking about in-universe game lore. Like, how many years have passed in-universe. How many things are in the backstory of the characters. Not anything real world. Real world crap doesn't matter for this in terms of ages because, again, seriously, we're talking about thousands of years. No one has been playing TTRPGs written in English for thousands of years because they haven't existed that long. Heck, English language hasn't existed more than a few hundred in anything people would consider to be its current form. So, again, no. Anyway, though. Okay, so people told me that the comments were hilarious, so I'm going to... Oh, wait, I should refresh. I just realized I haven't refreshed this.
Is there no mercy for the orc?
Alright, time to read comments. Sort by newest first. Oh, hey, Max Liao thought it was funny a couple hours ago. The in-game was silent. Whatever. There's a contemporary context for the term orc. Yeah. Russian aggressors. Yeah, interesting, to be honest. especially the fact that it's specific to Muscovites, which is, the capital of Russia. Yeah, I mean, if we look at Tolkien's idea of orcs, he did borrow ideas from there, where it's like, oh, well, here's our army of grunts that are expendable peons, where we send them into battle to fight the good fight, or, conquest, or whatever. And, we'll just replace them. Yeah, kill or be killed because your enemy is there to kill you. Yeah. Here's one. In the campaign world, the law and species creation we can have. The seven swords of campaign. One is only playable by an entirely orcish party. If it is played in the part of the world where the population of orcs is concentrated, many orcs in the part of the world have never even seen a human. It's something they're just a tale made up to frighten children into behaving. That's an interesting idea. That is a very interesting idea, because the fact that you're doing orc things for orc reasons, you don't have the party needing to follow the whole human rules thing, because there's no humans. Who cares? See, that's actually one of those things that's interesting, is because the fact that what most people think of as Klingons was a TNG version of Klingons that was drastically reimagined from how they originally were, which is kind of strange, since the new version became wildly popular and the old version was kind of seen as boring. Old Klingons were actually like the duplicitous spy lord type people, rather than a race of warmongering conquerors. I mean, they were warmongering. It's just that they liked to do clever tactics over brute force. Which, that's more an elf thing than a... actually, given the specifics of what they did, I would actually go more Kender than elf. Because they did some things on several occasions that were highly questionable in terms of safety, but were at the same time an attempt at work smarter, not harder. Yeah. Well, that's an interesting idea, but oh, you have nothing to say. Oh, yeah. In case people are wondering, yes, Max was actually trolling. Why tabletop tap rooms put one word replies to most of these things, I have no idea. And this one is actually a single period. He didn't even bother typing in a word. Why, dude? Why? Oh, hey, here's one we actually replied. Oh, yeah, this is actually an interesting point. Orcs expanding because orcs want to build a new city is a very orc thing to do, and not necessarily directly evil. It is, of course, something that the humans who live in the area want to tell the orcs not to do, because of the fact that, they were using that land for something, presumably. So, is it an evil act on the part of the orcs to want to build a city? No. Is it an evil act on the part of orcs to burn down a human town to make room for their city? Yeah. Does this give the humans a reason to go to war? Yeah. However, before we get to the part where the orcs actually burn down the town, you could attempt to negotiate a peaceful resolution. If the orcs decide they don't want peace and would rather burn down your town instead, well then, that's where you have them be evil. Until then, they're not doing something evil. Yeah. This is an interesting one because of the whole implacable enemies thing in Star Trek. usually it's a trope where the enemies want something that is so far outside of human perception that humans don't understand it because it doesn't make sense to humans. Like Hortus and the Horta concept of food. Hortus are silicon-based life forms that eat things humans don't consider food. Because, again, silicon-based life form. And also the whole like Horta concept of babies and reproduction, because Hortas lay eggs, but the eggs are made out of rock. It gets weird. But again, though, it's one of those things where the people who are doing the weird stuff for weird stuff reasons are doing so because of the fact that they have a different worldview than humans do. And that is very interesting. Which, orcs are a bad example of that. Orcs actually have a very similar worldview to humans because of the fact that while they work differently, they have the same categories of needs and wants that humans do. Enon is talking about the fact that Max Liao is trolling with his post not being 100% serious. Yeah, that's a fun one. Aw, poor Max. I mean, I personally love Hyperborea. Condor liked it, Max's trolling. That's fun. Ooh, this is a fun one. This is something I've had discussed with people previously, and yes, I'm going to read my own comment. People see the word race and think of it in real-world terms when in a situation where you actually have multiple species, race is sometimes the right word for it too. This is because of the fact that in a fictional setting, well, as the example I use here, is elves. How many different kinds of elves are there? Well, the exact number depends on the specific fictional setting. Norse mythology had Ljosulfur, Svartalfur, and Merkelfur. There's a considerable amount of debate about whether Svartalfur and Merkelfur are actually two different races or just two different words for the same thing. Because one of them means shadowy and the other one means dark, and there's no real distinction in how they're presented. Anyway, though, but there's at least two of them in that particular fictional setting. So that is two different races of elves. Elf is the species. Race is the, racial identity of a specific individual. Anyway, though, and in D&D, you have different kinds of elves. The exact number of kinds of elves depends on which version of D&D you're playing, but whatever. This goes to a lot of other kinds of fictional races, though. So, like if you go to Star Trek, Vulcans and Romulans, they're technically the same species. They're different races within the same species. Oh, and like I said here, Freeman makes the point of the fictional setting you're using defines what the races in that setting are. If orcs are a bad guy race that has been trying to wipe out the humans for 10,000 years, hey, you know what? That's what this particular world has as its background lore. Deal with it. Or play something else. Playing something else is a viable option. And here, though, is that you as the person writing the fiction, or maybe the world itself, or a specific module, or if you're just a DM making crap up. Here's some questions to ask yourself. The background lore matters a lot. Like, who are the orcs? Why are they bad guys? You need to have answers for those questions, because this defines why the heroes are opposing them. It also defines what they're doing, and what the heroes are actually expected to do in order to defeat them. Very important stuff. Anyway, moving on. Yeah. Elfbait mentions that there is a range of things, and it's not as simple as yes or no. Which, that again goes to that whole thing of orcs decide to invade human territory to build a new city. Is this necessarily evil of the orcs? Is it an understandable goal? However, while it's an understandable goal, it doesn't make it a goal that you will personally find to be acceptable or worthwhile or commendable. Oh, and I think I used an example here. Oh yeah, Palpatine. A well-developed bad guy you will hate more because of the fact that you understand that particular bad guy. Palpatine in Star Wars. He didn't get seduced by the dark side. He willingly embraced it. And then he went on to conquer most of the galaxy. He was the architect of the evil empire. It was his doing that resulted in the massacre of the Jedi. He created the empire as we know it, and killed billions in his quest to solidify his power. And all of that he chose to do for his own pursuit of personal power. He wasn't tricked into doing it. He wasn't forced into doing it. He wasn't doing it because he was corrupted by the dark side. No. The dark side served him, not the other way around. And that was what made Palpatine such a, I guess you could say, punchable bad guy. You wanted him dead. You wanted him out of the picture because you knew what he had done, why he had done it, and you resented him for both of those things. He wasn't someone that you respected or admired. I mean, he did have certain traits that were considered to be, I guess, you could respect him for being a powerful opponent. Sure, you didn't like him as a person, though. And that's one of those things where understanding the bad guy can make them worse. Because it's a matter of realizing that what the bad guy wants is fundamentally opposed to what you want. And so in depth, deeply opposed to what you want, that you couldn't give the bad guy what he wants, even if you wanted to, because it's that deeply opposed to what you want. This is sarcasm. I would say no. I'm not even sure what he's talking about, because the way he capitalized orc makes it sound like he's talking about that stupid Paizo thing and not the D&D race, which that's a completely different usage of the combination of letters. It's not even a word. It's an acronym. Open rules something. I don't remember. Ugh. Apparently it's a horrible idea, and it's something you should never touch. Yeah, this is kind of true, although it's a vague way of explaining the concept. Yeah. See, the problem here, and I think Spencer is actually nailing it, is that one, if you're in the first group, make a better analogy. Because quite frankly, orcs are a terrible analogy to minorities because the fact that they're not oppressed for being, a minority. No, they're oppressed because they're not a minority in the areas where they live. And they are very much not a minority. Which, of course, kills the whole minority angle entirely because, you have this region where there's like, I don't know, 20 million orcs. Yeah. Kills the minority thing. Dead. Anyway, though, the second thing, as I think that the real core of the whole, like, the Orc Lives Matter inspiration is the fact that most people who espouse the idea use a bizarre caricature of orcs that, quite frankly, is offensive to most people who are actual minorities. Like, wait a second, this is what you think we act like? Ew, gross. And again, it's one of those things. It's like, why are you treating this as a minority analogy? It doesn't make sense as a minority analogy. But yeah, ooh, I didn't thumb this guy up. He needs thumbed up. Very, very. Oh, actually, you know what? There's a third one. People who are activists and don't care about the topic. People who are just trying to stir up crap. Why are they stirring up crap? Well, you see, because of the fact that if they didn't stir up crap, they would have no reason to be engaging in this topic at all. That's the end thing, is that the people who were trying to push the Orc Lives Matter thing were making up a point of view solely for the purpose of trying to say it was bad when the point of view didn't previously exist at all. It's just dumb. This is true. I'm genuinely not sure if he got that point. Yeah, whatever. Well, hey, I'm almost at 30 minutes already. Well then. Yeah, Geek got that. But then again, Geek has also watched Max talking about this in depth and not just reading the single tweet for a few minutes. This is also one of those things where he's referring to very, very loose inspiration and not anything specific. It's just generic wannabe conqueror bad guy type ideas where people, like, this country is ours now. We're going to kill everyone who used to live here kind of people. I mean, this is kind of true, but hey, See, Wizard Tower is kind of in the ballpark, but didn't quite nail it. Yeah, that's true. Alrighty then. Well, that's enough of that. So yeah, it's like the whole orc thing. what orcs are is defined by the in-universe lore, not real-world racial politics. Seriously, it's fiction. Trying to use real-world racial politics is only valid if the in-universe fiction accommodates them. I mean, like, for example, in a Call of Cthulhu game. Call of Cthulhu games often do use real-world racial strife and politics as part of the fiction because of the fact that Call of Cthulhu is a setting that is very similar to the real world. Usually set in, like, say, the 70s or the 80s, mind you, but it used the same things that you would have in the real world in that time period, plus a few interesting things that make it fiction, of course. But the overall idea is that you have a fictionalized version of the real world as a starting point for Call of Cthulhu. You don't start with a completely fantasy realm where they don't even talk about real-world ethnicity at all. I mean, like in Lord of the Rings, no real-world ethnicity or ethnic classification is ever mentioned. Granted, they do have what are, in truth, multiple different ethnic groups of humans in Lord of the Rings. However, they are called by phrases such as Men of Gondor or Easterlings, not anything even remotely resembling a real-world ethnic classification. Why? Because Tolkien didn't include those in his work. So, you, as someone playing in Tolkien's world, need to use the ethnic classifications and racial divisions that Tolkien created for his world. Because, let's face it, the Men of Gondor have a history of dealing with other races. And quite frankly, it's a very interesting one. And to ignore it is to, well, why are you playing the setting if you're ignoring the background lore and history? Anyways, I will leave it on that thought, because, again, that's where I started with this. The in-universe lore is what makes the races of an in-universe setting what they are.